to a Diddy party?
Yeah, but now keep in mind.
I'm going to.
In all fairness, there are different kinds of Diddy parties. I've seen Diddy parties where children were there. It's when you go someplace alone and stay too long, and that's when trouble happens. But
So the problem with being alone is you can end up with a.
That's the first time I saw him. That's not the first time I met him.
Ever since then, we've been doing this at clubs all over the country. And we'll be coming to a city near you real soon.
Arsenio Hall just exposed Eddie Murphy's darkest secret without even saying his name. He joked about Diddy's parties, then warned that going alone could get you trapped.
I swear to you, if you have the rule of not going anywhere alone, you don't get in as much trouble.
He mentioned baby oil, people not making it out, and friends who stayed too long.
1,000 bottles of baby oil? First of all, that sounds like a good way to keep people from leaving. Because if you got a lot of baby oil, it ain't nobody going nowhere. You know,
You're
you
just
start
slipping and sliding. You can't turn the doorknob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one name that kept floating in the background? Eddie Murphy. Then came the lawsuits, the LGBT+ protests. The moment he let Diddy cry on his couch and sell vodka without a single tough question. What was Arsenio hiding? And why did he suddenly start talking now, after all these years of silence? Let's find out. When Arsenio Hall sat down for a recent interview, no one expected him to say what he said. It started off light, even humorous. He was asked a simple question. Did you ever go to a Diddy party? And he nodded, smiling. But instead of dodging or deflecting like most celebrities do when asked about Hollywood's darker side, Arsenio leaned into the question with a disturbing level of honesty. What followed was a rare, unfiltered glimpse into a side of the entertainment industry most people aren't supposed to see. Arsenio explained that there isn't just one kind of Diddy party. There are two very different worlds operating under that same label. On one hand, there were the early evening events that looked like any other elite gathering. Music playing, food being served, kids running around, families in attendance. The kind of party you'd expect from a high-profile entertainer who wants to maintain a public image. Harmless. But then, there were the others. The ones that started late and went well past midnight. The ones that made Arsenio feel the need to bring a partner or a friend just to stay safe.
And my secret has always been, first of all, I don't go anywhere without my woman. You know, I think don't go anywhere alone. I swear to you, if you have the rule of not going anywhere alone, you don't get in as much trouble.
He didn't dance around it. You don't go anywhere alone, he said bluntly.
It's very rarely does somebody say, yeah, me and my boys were hanging out. I ended up with my ass. You know?
The room laughed, but if you listen closely, that laughter came with hesitation. The kind of laugh people give when they're not sure if what they just heard was a punchline or a warning. Arsenio may have framed it as a joke, but the message underneath was dead serious. Go alone, and you might find yourself in a situation you never agreed to. Then came the baby oil reference. He talked about how some people joke that there were 1,000 bottles of baby oil at some of these parties. That might sound ridiculous, but Arsenio used it to make a dark point.
It's the ones where there
I don't hope. I want to know.
1,000 bottles of baby oil? First of all, that sounds like a good way to keep people from leaving. Because if you got a lot of baby oil, it ain't nobody going nowhere. You know,
You're
you
just slipping and sliding. You can't turn the doorknob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it sounded like comedy, but peel back the laughter and you're left with something more sinister. The suggestion wasn't just that wild things happened, but that guests could be physically trapped, manipulated, or rendered powerless in those environments. What makes all of this more chilling is that Arsenio is not just some outsider. He's been part of Hollywood's inner circle for decades. And for years, he shared that space with Eddie Murphy, his longtime friend and collaborator. The two came up in the same industry, starred in iconic films together, and were regular fixtures at high-profile gatherings. So when Arsenio starts talking about these exclusive parties, The unspoken question becomes obvious. Who else was there? He never directly names Eddie Murphy in this segment, but the connection is hard to ignore. Arsenio's emphasis on not going alone and his repeated warnings suggest that someone close to him, someone he might have seen get caught up in something, left a lasting impression. Whether Eddie attended the same parties, witnessed something, or participated in it remains unconfirmed. But when a close friend starts talking this openly, people start filling in the blanks. Arsenio also recalled a moment from his time on Celebrity Apprentice that gave more weight to his story. He described being in the room with Diddy, Donald Trump, and singer Aubrey O'Day. According to him, Aubrey was vocal about her negative experiences with Diddy. She didn't hold back. What shocked Arsenio most was not her outburst. It was Trump's response.
He says some negative things about Diddy, and I'm listening. Trump chimes in and defends Diddy. And that surprised me, because usually Trump don't defend nobody but himself.
That interaction stuck with Arsenio, especially as the allegations surrounding Diddy have become public in recent years. Looking back, he realized that moment was more than just awkward small talk. It was a glimpse into how powerful people protect each other, no matter what they're accused of. For someone like Arsenio, who's seen both the glitz and the grime of the industry, that realization hit hard. What began as a casual story about party culture slowly turned into a layered confession, a warning, a reveal, and a red flag, all rolled into one. And though Arsenio never pointed the finger directly at Eddie Murphy, the implication was clear. The people at these parties weren't strangers. They were familiar faces, famous ones. And if Arsenio has stories to tell, chances are others do too. They're just not talking yet. It's one thing for Arsenio Hall to talk about the chaos behind Diddy's parties. It's another to realize who he's not naming. And that silence? That's where Eddie Murphy enters the conversation, without even being mentioned. For decades, Eddie and Arsenio have been nearly inseparable in the public eye. Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall aren't just longtime collaborators. They've shared nearly 4 decades of brotherhood, forged in the heart of Hollywood. Their story begins in the early 1980s, when both were young, ambitious comedians trying to break through in Los Angeles. They were introduced by fellow comic Keenen Ivory Wayans, and from that point forward, their connection only grew deeper.
And Keenen Wayans called me and said, why don't you meet us at the Improv? Because Keenan's a New York comic, and they were friends with Eddie. And he said, Damon, my brother is coming. You haven't met Damon.
From the outside, their chemistry looked effortless. Whether on screen or on stage, the two seemed to anticipate each other's every move. It wasn't just talent, it was trust. That trust came full circle years later when Eddie Murphy was chosen for induction into the NAACP Hall of Fame. In a moment that felt more personal than ceremonial, Arsenio Hall stood at the podium, paying tribute to the man he'd known through every stage of fame and struggle.
Keenen heard that story and introduced us. And the first thing Eddie ever said to me in Murphy fashion, he looked at me and he says, nigga, you don't look like me.
Their bond wasn't just professional, it was personal. Arsenio Hall is the godfather to Murphy's eldest daughter, Bria. That kind of relationship doesn't happen in the spotlight. It's built behind the scenes, through real loyalty. And in an industry known for shallow friendships and short alliances, theirs endured. Back in 1988, Eddie Murphy was already a certified superstar. Hits like Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America had made him one of the biggest names in entertainment. At the same time, Arsenio was carving out his own space, first guest hosting for The Late Show, and later helming his own talk show. That same year, their creative paths crossed in a major way with Coming to America, a film that would become a cultural landmark. Their performances weren't just funny, they became iconic. Murphy took the lead as Prince Akeem, while Hall played Semi. But both actors also stepped into multiple supporting roles, including fan-favorite characters like Randy Watson and Reverend Brown. It wasn't just a comedy, it was a showcase of their full range, both as comedians and actors. Decades later, they reunited for Coming to America. And even after 30 years, the chemistry hadn't faded. They reprised their characters, along with all the outrageous personalities that made the original film unforgettable. This time for a new generation of fans. Outside of Coming to America, their creative partnership continued with Harlem Nights, a film that brought together some of the era's top black entertainers. Murphy wrote and directed the movie, and cast Hall in one of the most memorable roles. In one standout scene, Arsenio plays the grief-stricken brother of a slain gangster. His performance, over the top, emotional, and perfectly timed, offered comic relief in a tense storyline. It was a brief scene, but unforgettable. Some even argued it deserved an award all its own.
That's basically what the movie's about. And I kill Arsenio.
He's not for real. You have to see the movie. He's not really dead at the movie.
Meanwhile, Arsenio Hall was making history on his own. From 1989 to 1994, the Arsenio Hall Show redefined late-night television. He opened doors for guests who were often shut out of other shows. He invited hip-hop artists, athletes, and rising black entertainers to the stage. And with Murphy as both a frequent guest and behind-the-scenes supporter, the show had no shortage of star power. Their appearances together were always loose, authentic, and funny, not rehearsed, but real. During that same period, Murphy spoke publicly about what he called the Black Pack, a group of influential black creatives who supported and challenged each other during a time when Hollywood often overlooked them. This informal circle included not only Murphy and Hall, but also Robert Townsend, Paul Mooney, and Keenan Ivory Wayans. Together, they weren't just making people laugh. They were writing, directing, producing, and creating opportunities for the next generation. They were shifting the culture, one project at a time. Eddie and Arsenio have been close for so long, it's almost impossible to think Arsenio was attending these parties without Eddie ever joining in. And that's where the silence becomes a problem. Because when you've been around that kind of environment and say nothing, it starts to look like you're trying to protect someone, or maybe protect yourself. And while Eddie Murphy has stayed quiet about those parties, Arsenio's name ended up in a whole different kind of mess. This time, not because of what he said, but because of what someone said about him. In 2016, something very surprising happened. Singer Sinéad O'Connor made a strong claim on Facebook. She said that Arsenio Hall had given drugs to Prince for many years. Prince was a beloved music star who had passed away not long before.
The CPR fails. He is pronounced dead at 10:07 Thursday morning.
O'Connor also said that Arsenio had given her drugs once without her knowing, at actor Eddie Murphy's house. These words were very serious, and many people were shocked. She even said she had reported Arsenio Hall to the police. It made people wonder if he had something to do with Prince's death. At the time, many fans were still trying to understand how Prince had died. Some people believed he didn't use drugs and lived a clean life.
Did you know about him taking medication for pain?
Not necessarily. I've never even seen him take an aspirin or a Tylenol. I've never seen him take anything, you know.
But after his death, reports came out that Prince was using painkillers and other drugs in secret. He was even planning to meet with a doctor who helped people stop using drugs. This new information changed how some fans saw Prince. It made O'Connor's words even more powerful, and the story got a lot of attention. Arsenio Hall quickly responded to what O'Connor said. He did not stay quiet. He said her claims were not true at all. He felt that what she said had hurt his name and career. So, he filed a lawsuit against her. A lawsuit is when someone takes another person to court for saying or doing something wrong. Hall said O'Connor had lied and made up stories. His legal team said he never gave drugs to Prince and never gave drugs to anyone. They called her Facebook post harmful and full of false information.
But the fact that somebody's being held accountable for their social media post, it's about damn time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so this is $5 million. Is she going to end up paying some money for this?
At first, O'Connor did not seem worried. She laughed at the lawsuit and called it funny on her Facebook page. She said she was not afraid and even looked forward to seeing how Hall would try to prove her wrong. She acted as if it was not a big deal. She kept standing by what she had said and didn't want to take it back. Many people were surprised by her reaction. It looked like she was not planning to say sorry. But later, O'Connor changed her mind. As more time passed, she started to understand how serious her words had been. She knew that her post had caused pain and confusion. She finally decided to take it back. She apologized to Arsenio Hall in public. She said she was wrong to say that he gave Prince drugs or had anything to do with Prince's death. This was a big step. The lawsuit ended, and Arsenio Hall's name was cleared.
Later, O'Connor is taking back what she said, telling TMZ, "I apologize for my Facebook post about Arsenio to the extent that anyone thought I was accusing him of acting as Prince's drug dealer and supplying him with illegal hard drugs."
By the time Arsenio had cleared his name from Sinéad O'Connor's explosive accusation, his public image was already fragile. The people who had once seen him as untouchable were now revisiting old moments, looking at his career with new eyes. And one moment that came back into focus was the time LGBTQ+ activists took their protest right onto his stage while the cameras were rolling. Back in the 1990s, many people didn't talk openly about gay rights on TV. It was a very different time. A lot of TV shows avoided topics like being gay or having different sexual identities. But Arsenio was not afraid. He invited famous gay guests like Elton John to his show. He wanted to show people that being gay was not wrong and that everyone deserves respect. He didn't shout about it all the time, but he quietly helped open the door for more LGBTQ+ people to be seen and heard on TV.
There was no one more important to the gay community in late night.
Even though Hall tried to do good, some activists were still unhappy. A group of gay rights supporters said that his show didn't have enough openly gay guests. They thought Hall was avoiding the topic or not doing enough for the LGBTQ+ community. This made them upset, and they began to protest.
We were in a climate and a time where the ignorance of the gay community about their own community was their problem.
In 1991, the group called Queer Nation interrupted Hall's show while it was filming. It was hard for Hall to understand why they were so angry. He believed he was already helping in his own way. He didn't stay quiet about the protest. He stood up for himself during his show. He told the audience that he had always supported gay rights. He reminded everyone that many LGBTQ+ guests had been on his show, even if they didn't talk about being gay. Some people want to keep their personal life private, and Hall respected that. He didn't force anyone to share things they weren't ready to say on TV. His audience clapped and cheered, showing that they believed in him.
You think I haven't had somebody on the show because they're gay? What's wrong with you, man? I'm black. I'm black, man.
He also helped educate people about HIV and AIDS. Back then, many people didn't understand the disease. When his friend, basketball star Magic Johnson, said he had HIV, people got scared. Hall worked with Johnson to make a public message. They wanted people to learn the truth and stop being afraid. Hall used his show to teach people, which was very brave during a time when few others would. Later, Hall talked about this in an interview. He said many of his friends were gay, but they were scared to come out. Being openly gay could have hurt their jobs or careers. Hall said he had guests like Luther Vandross, Ellen DeGeneres, and Rosie O'Donnell on his show, but they didn't speak about their sexuality back then. He respected them and gave them a safe space.
I got gay friends I've had on the show. Because you don't know them or it ain't who you want on the show, you got a problem with it? If you want to book it, get yourself a show.
He tried to support people quietly, even if the world expected him to be louder about it. And that same quiet support, almost to a fault, showed up again years later when another powerful figure sat across from him. In December 2013, Diddy appeared on the Arsenio Hall show. He wasn't promoting an album, a new single, or even a fashion line. He was just there, on a talk show, at a time when he didn't really need to be. And yet, it felt like the room belonged to him the moment he walked on stage. The energy between Arsenio and Diddy was almost too friendly. It didn't feel like a casual interview. It felt like a homecoming. Arsenio praised him openly, called for his return to rap, and toasted Ciroc with him like they were celebrating something. Diddy wasn't just a guest, he was treated like royalty. This wasn't the first time Diddy had gotten that kind of treatment, but the timing made it feel different. He was building Revolt TV at the time, a network he said would be the ESPN of music, and Arsenio gave him the perfect space to talk about it, uninterrupted, completely unchallenged. No tough questions, no tension, just support, promotion, smiles, toasts. A late-night platform being used to prop up a mogul who already had control of half the industry. To anyone watching casually, the interview seemed warm, honest even. Diddy opened up about his father, who was murdered when he was just 3 years old. He said that he didn't cry over it until 5 years before that interview, well into his 30s. He talked about the hole that fatherlessness left in his life, about needing an older man for advice and feeling like he didn't have anyone to call. He admitted the pain of growing up without a man to guide him. It was a powerful moment, but even in that vulnerability, Diddy kept control. It was polished, measured. Nothing about the interview felt off script. In fact, the entire appearance came across like a branding move. Emotional transparency mixed with strategic product placement. In the same breath, he was crying about his father and selling Ciroc. Arsenio didn't push back on anything. He didn't ask about past scandals. He didn't mention Diddy's long list of critics, or the rumors that had already been circling for years about how he ran Bad Boy Records, or his growing influence in circles far outside music. None of that came up. Instead, Arsenio gushed over Kendrick Lamar's Control verse, saying he thought Diddy should have responded. And Diddy used that as an opening to pivot straight back into promoting Revolt. One more product, one more power move. For people who had seen Arsenio challenge guests in the past, or who remembered his reputation for giving space to voices outside the mainstream, this moment felt strange. The man who once risked everything by putting Farrakhan on his couch had suddenly become someone else. Someone quieter, safer, easier to work with. It made people wonder, why was Arsenio handling Diddy with gloves on? Maybe it was respect, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was just business. After all, Diddy was now a media tycoon with his own channel. And Arsenio, in his second run on TV after being off the air for nearly 20 years, might have needed the connection more than he let on. But there was also a deeper discomfort hiding beneath the surface of that night. For all of Diddy's smiles and polished stories, there was an unspoken understanding that his power reached far beyond music. And Arsenio, who had been burned before for giving controversial figures a voice, seemed to know better than to ask the wrong questions. He stayed in his lane. He lifted the brand. He toasted the vodka. And in doing so, he gave Diddy something even more valuable than screen time. He gave him credibility, legitimacy, a stage where the past didn't matter and the future was all about TV deals, premium liquor, and inspirational quotes. It's a moment that, at the time, barely raised eyebrows. But today, with all the legal issues Diddy is facing, it looks different. Knowing what we know now, the clip plays like a performance, a business exchange disguised as a friendly interview. And Arsenio, whether he meant to or not, helped polish the image of a man many people now say should have been questioned far more carefully. Looking at Arsenio Hall's journey, it's clear he was never just a comedian or a talk show host. He was a man constantly walking a tightrope, trying to entertain, to uplift, to protect, and sometimes to survive. He gave a platform to voices that others ignored, but he also gave silence to people who may not have deserved it. Whether it was staying quiet about what he saw at Diddy's parties, refusing to push back on dangerous power, or being too cautious when protesters demanded more, Arsenio was always stuck between doing what felt right and doing what felt safe. He watched his show collapse. He fought off rumors and lawsuits. He stayed loyal to longtime friends like Eddie Murphy, even when things around them got darker. And through it all, he kept showing up, on camera, in conversations, and sometimes in places he might wish he hadn't been at all. Now that more truth is coming out, about the industry, about Diddy, about the culture that protects the powerful, Arsenio's silence feels heavier than ever. Because if even he is beginning to speak in half-truths and quiet warnings, it makes you wonder, how deep does it really go? This isn't just about what Arsenio revealed, it's about everything Hollywood still refuses to say. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.